Florida was the largest producer of tangerines in the world. Production in the late 1990s reached 20 million boxes annually. Orange City, a town in the south of Florida, had a population in 1998 of just 2,795. One person who lived in Orange City at that time and had occasional involvement with the tangerine business was Daphne Stevenson. Daphne Stevenson was a checkout girl in one of Orange City's two supermarkets that had been owned by the Davis family for nearly 40 years. Daphne Stevenson had gone to school with Bob Davis. Bob Davis inherited the two supermarkets in Orange City in 1997. They had necked once behind the gym, Daphne Stevenson and Bob Davis, in their youth. Daphne's jaw would dislocate. Pop. 3 times she had to break away from Bob Davis's amorous embrace and push her jaw back into place with 2 fingers. Daphne Stevenson sometimes had epileptic fits too. So did St. Anthony, the patron saint of skin rashes. So did Jesus Christ. So did Muhammad the Prophet. On the 16th of June 1998, she had a fit while at work. Bob Davis didn't phone for an ambulance. He called over his priest who, as Providence would have it, was shopping in the frozen meat section. The priest, a man by the name of Stephen L. Jones, had a theological degree from Xenophobe Bible School in Portland, Oregon, where the most exciting thing to do on a Saturday night was to listen to Professor Watmore snoring, in the vain hope that he would utter something interesting in his sleep. Stephen L. Jones decided that Daphne Stevenson was possessed by a devil, a medium sort of devil. He proposed they tried and tested treatment. First, prayers were uttered as Daphne Stevenson, foaming and shaking wildly, fell off her checkout seat. The till was closed. Daphne's jaw went pop. As Daphne's condition deteriorated, more drastic measures were taken. The priest rolled up his sleeves and hit her about the body with a frozen ostrich leg. The post-mortem examination of Daphne Stevenson's body showed that she had suffered 4 broken ribs, a broken arm, and a fractured skull. It was the fractured skull that killed her. The priest left with 4 bags of shopping. Daphne Stevenson's body was hidden in the supermarket deep freeze by Bob Davis. The till was opened. The police found the body. They got the eyewitness accounts. They went to arrest the priest. But by then, the priest and his followers, including Bob Davis, the manager of the supermarket, had barricaded themselves inside their church, as people do. It was a little church, built on a small knoll and surrounded by a white painted fence and poplar trees. There were 35 different species of wild flower growing on the grass around the church, although no one had ever counted them. Inside the church huddled 26 people who had decided to dedicate the rest of their lives to protecting Stephen L. Jones, the priest who was becoming known on the TV and in the papers as the Ostrich Preacher. Most of the 26 faithful were tangerine pickers, or retired tangerine pickers, or would-be tangerine pickers. In fact, just about everyone huddled in the church had in some way or other occasional involvement with the tangerine business. They also somehow had guns, big old Chinese guns. When the police arrived, they were greeted with a hail of fire. They had expected this. The police had got used to being greeted with a hail of gunfire when they went to churches on business. What with it being nearly the end of the millennium. The holy were trigger happy. The holy were always blowing themselves up, or poisoning themselves, or burning their churches and temples down, or filling underground with nerve gas, or getting the police to shoot them, what with it being nearly the end of the millennium. Things didn't get much better after the millennium either. A siege got underway. Billy Adams, a local entrepreneur, set up his hot dog stand just outside the police line and made a fine American profit feeding the police, the federal agents, and the press. There were also a fair number of tangerines eaten. Things started nicely. The local sheriff got to use his loudspeaker, which was something he really liked to do. He said things like, "Come on now," and "This is silly, Stephen." Stephen L. Jones got to go on live TV telling everyone who would listen that he was God's messenger, etc., etc. At night, you could hear the little group of people huddled in the little church sing. The church was called Riverside, and it would soon be on the minds of most people on the planet for a brief while. About the time it takes for a carton of milk to go off. You see, what happened was this. There was an attempted breakout. Stephen L. Jones and his followers ran out of the great big white doors of their pretty little white church, guns a-blazing. The police dropped their hot dogs and tangerines and fired back. It was hell. The 26 Stephen L. Jones followers surged towards the police cars parked across the drive, firing their weapons from their hips, screaming and praising the Lord. Stephen L. Jones, Bible in hand, pushed his followers on from behind. By the time they had got halfway down the little winding drive, most were dead amid the 35 species of wild flowers that no one had counted. By the time they had reached the police line, only one follower of the ostrich preacher was alive. She was alive because no one would shoot her. Policemen just lowered their guns. The woman was armed with a Chinese assault rifle made when China was officially atheist and the largest producer of soya beans in the world. The rifle was modelled on the Soviet AK-47 and had been used for a time by the IRA. It was accurate when fired in single shots, but was difficult to control in automatic. The woman fired on full automatic or rock and roll mode. The reason the policemen lowered their weapons was because the woman had strapped her 3 babies to her body. In the end, she killed 4 policemen and wounded 10 before Sergeant S. Gillum fired 5 rounds at her. 3 of the rounds hit the woman, killing her instantly. The 4th bullet hit one of the babies in the head, and the baby died instantly. The 5th bullet punctured another baby's lung. The wound made a "sss" noise as the baby's tiny white lung collapsed. That baby died in an air ambulance. The baby who survived was Edgar Malroy. The woman who strapped her 3 babies to her body was called Mary, and she died following the orders of a man who claims to be God's messenger, etc., etc. Was he? Who knows? China was, at one point, the largest producer of porcelain in the world.